Hi there. By now you should have your organisation's basic carbon footprint. The question is, what do you do with just a number? And is this number really enough to understand the risks and opportunities for your business? This short presentation aims to help try and answer these questions and look at how CarbonSense believes organisations should be responding to the two key related issues of climate change and energy security. Just very briefly about CarbonSense, we're a core team supported by a network of associates with a breadth and depth of backgrounds to take account of the wide-ranging nature of carbon, climate change and energy security. We help organisations understand and respond effectively to climate change. We help businesses count and manage carbon, and we help you engage and communicate with stakeholders using workshops, film and creative visual techniques to engender greater behavioural change. To understand the problem and how to respond, we need to understand that climate change and energy security are two sides of the same coin. Whichever you approach first, you will inevitably end up confronting the other. To get to the heart of the problem, we need to ask ourselves what we are running out of. Although there may still be decades of oil, coal and gas supplies, what we are running out of, in our view, and fast, is the supply of cheap oil and gas. And this relates to energy security. The pressure of climate change implies that we are running out of a safe place to store the carbon atoms that are released when we use these fossil fuels. So there are two important points for your business here. One, the cost to store these carbon emissions, i.e. carbon credits, will start to affect more and more businesses. The net will widen. And two, carbon in the form of oil and gas faces the high probability of shortening supplies and ever-increasing prices. For your business, the pressures will be both financial and environmental. Rising oil and gas prices combined with carbon taxes will place increasing financial pressures, whilst the use of oil, gas and other fossil fuels and the consequent emissions will place adaptive pressures upon your value chain. A business that is serious about its financial and environmental integrity will investigate its full exposure to these two areas. What's clear at the moment is that governments, organisations and people are not responding quickly enough to the problem, so we have to ask why. And at CarbonSense, we think that the problem is twofold. One, the invisibility of the fossil fuels and their subsequent emissions, and two, an insufficient economic system. The carbon that we use in the form of oil and gas and the emissions that result are all invisible. Oil and gas comes from the ground, in through pipes to our businesses, homes and transport. Carbon dioxide, the main gas emitted as a result of these processes, just dissipates as a colourless gas into our atmosphere. If the emissions were purple, like this balloon, we'd start to see the sky turn a darker shade of purple visibly every day, and we'd probably start to act. So, what we need to do as businesses and as people is to make carbon visible if we are really to enable society to get the scale of this problem. When the Buncefield oil depot caught fire in 2005, it epitomised both sides of the problem. The oil that we used became visible, causing huge plumes of black smoke to be emitted. The point here is that every day in the UK we emit 4 times the amount of carbon dioxide that was burnt at Buncefield in that day. The problem is that we do not see it. Business dependency upon invisible fossil fuels and the invisible emissions they produce as a result is made harder to understand by their complex value chains. This is obvious when one looks at the issues of boundaries and related energy use and emissions. For a typical company, the counting boundaries are those as shown in the diagram. The boundary is fairly tight, and is the boundary that our calculator and others use to calculate your basic carbon footprint. However, this is only one part of the picture. You also have products supplied to you which have energy and emissions related to their production. These are complex and difficult to calculate. In addition, there are the emissions associated with the use of your products and services, which can sometimes dwarf the emissions from producing them. And there are the emissions related to your employees and others, which, although not directly related to your product, can be incentivized and affected through company-directed policies. So to really understand the financial and environmental risks to your business, you will need to understand the carbon embedded within your entire value chain. You need to understand your carbon vulnerability. Currently, we have an economic system as well that does not value the atmosphere fully, and all our decisions are based upon this framework of rules. However, carbon will become embedded at its core in our belief, affecting all businesses large and small. A business that has contemplated and examined its carbon exposure, both to fossil fuels and emissions, will be prepared for this systemic change and place itself in a position to leverage the opportunities. The oil price is already starting to affect the ability of companies to do business. Add to this an inevitable carbon price, and the required actions are clear. A financially and environmentally resilient business needs to understand and compensate for its carbon dependence. A resilient business in the future will be one that does not rely heavily upon carbon-based fossil fuels and or create emissions as a result of its product. As a starting point, 1 barrel of oil accounts for about 400 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions. And with a current carbon credit price of approximately $30, this implies an approximate 10% tax on all oil and gas use. So, have you analysed how this affects your bottom line? So how should you respond? Well, in 2005, BT asked us to define what a truly carbon neutral BT would look like. This work shaped our thinking around the idea of carbon neutrality and whether it made sense. What we found was that there was a space beyond the stated end goal of neutrality where real opportunities and change become apparent. To simply stop at offsetting seemed to make no sense when the wealth of opportunities beyond are investigated and understood. As we've seen, there is no simple boundary to count your carbon footprint, so we think that to offset and claim neutrality in many cases is disingenuous. A business that starts to do this we call a carbon positive company. A business that moves towards carbon positive will have understood and managed their carbon vulnerability. The process of understanding your carbon vulnerability will allow you to glimpse the nature of a business that can and cannot exist in the inevitable low-carbon future. Stepping beyond carbon neutrality and into the carbon positive space will allow your business to open up the space for creative responses to the problems and a wealth of opportunities. So our experience and analysis over the last 5 years has shown us that to offset and become carbon neutral may lead to missed opportunities. What CarbonSense can offer your business is the guidance to transition towards a more resilient business model that can flourish and succeed in the low-carbon world of tomorrow.